Hello, my name is Peter Cinnamon, and this is an Irish League podcast called Kicking Match, which comes at you weekly. And we can finally say it, the squads are set. The transfer window is closed, and somebody is going to win this league, and it's going to be with the toys currently sitting in their chest. Some teams stuck, others twisted, some twisting a lot more than others. We'll run our eyes over it all. Who were the biggest movers and shakers within the league? What could it mean for the title race and beyond? And most importantly, what player will end up playing with the most ridiculously high random squad number on their back for about half a season? We'll probably not get an answer to that in this podcast, but if a player does actually play with the number 99 on their back, I think some fans' heads may literally explode. As we wait for that to probably not happen, let's get down to business, shall we? I forgot to say that last week was Kicking Match 25. It's now obviously Kicking Match episode 26, but I just would like to say thank you very much. If you've been here from the very start, you're absolute class. If you're just joining me these past few weeks, or even this is the first time, you're very welcome. I hope you're well with 25, now 26 being passed. It's mad to think how deep we are into the season. But let's not worry about that, as there was lots of great games. There was some cracking goals this weekend, and on top of that there is a whole collection of cup games coming up this Saturday, and of course the transfer window has slammed shut. It doesn't close with a whimper, and if I'm creating any kind of tradition on this podcast, it seems like inviting this man on for a bit of transfer frolics, a bit of crack when it comes to swapping shirts and posing beside the manager. Well, he seems to be the man for the job. He's one of the best sports journalists for me this country has to offer. He's an absolute joy to talk to. A massive welcome back to Stephen Looney. Stephen, the last time I was talking to you, it was at the end of a transfer window. We were talking about Jordan Stewart playing for another team, and Glentoran were on a hot streak. So much has changed, yet so little has.
Well, yeah, it's the Irish League, Peter, isn't it? Never a dull moment. Thank goodness, going back to that start of the season when Glentoran were flying. 15 wins in a row, only conceded 2 goals, and then the wheels came off. Not for the first time with Glentoran in recent seasons, unfortunately. We saw the probably inevitable car park protest in East Belfast, and I must say, Peter, I was a bit surprised that that Mick resigned 3 days later. Just if we're talking about Glentoran, I thought he would have been a bit more. Mick's a headstrong guy, and I thought he would have wanted to sort of see it through. I think that. I do think that he would have believed if we've gone 15 games, winning in a row before, we mightn't be able to do that again, but we can put together another run and get back on track. It seems possibly to be happening now with Roddy McAree in charge, but Mick is gone as far as being a manager is concerned, and it might divide a lot of Glentoran people, but a lot of Glentoran fans wanted to see him leave the position he was in.
He's obviously been gone for a couple of weeks now, but from someone who's watched the game for a long time, what kind of legacy do you think he'll leave? He hasn't completely exited the stage, but he had a roller coaster of a time being a manager for one of the most high profile clubs on this island. I think I'll always remember the streak that we saw. What will be the big highlights that you'll think back when the name Mick McDermott comes out?
Mick's a peculiar animal. Okay, people have asked me a lot about Mick in recent times, and I've consistently said, Peter, in my view, Mick is 95% great industry, vision, energy, professionalism, and he has worked his butt off at that club, certainly for 3 years until he brought general manager Desi Curry in to take some of the responsibilities off him. I think so far he's been a positive for Glentoran, a very positive, very big positive for Glentoran, because they were going nowhere by the time he took over. They were in trouble. As a manager, I have to say, well, if you look at it baldly, Glentoran in the last few years under Mick weren't able to sustain a full campaign as such. They either got off to a slow start, maybe lost points before Christmas, or last season it was they blew up at the end. Now they've blown up before Christmas. That spells warning signs for me. Yes, you could say, and Mick's entitled to say, yes, we did have serious injuries to contend with. You could say that other clubs had serious injuries to contend with as well. But I think Mick's not a stupid person. I think it would have been a better pill to swallow, but I do think he accepted that maybe his time as manager was up. We'll have to see, Peter. I mean, it's a bit of a cruel game because we're going to have to compare Rodney McAree's team to Mick's team, and he's done everything right so far. Okay, he's had the arrival of Niall McGinn, and he's had, getting the likes of Aidan Wilson back, and of course we know Shane McCartan returned from suspension to great success on Monday night. Just a wee interesting thing, Peter, like just could be something and nothing, an insight. Niall McGinn's first game at Glentoran was the defeat to Larne, which prompted the car park protest. Mick started him on the right. In the following two games, Rodney started him on the left, and he scored 4 goals. So, that's an insight. It may be something or nothing. I think the time to judge would be at the end of the season, really, when we see how Rodney does with the team.
Well, let's go to the man sitting in the hot seat in East Belfast. Rodney McAree, as starts go, as new manager bounces go. It's so far so good. 4 wins in all competitions. His latest coming against Crusaders on Monday night on Sky Sports. It was the first time Glentoran have come out the victors in a top 6 meeting and 7 attempts. There's clearly controversy in this game. Something's working, and as you alluded to, maybe it's a change of formation, maybe it's setting out the team slightly differently, but right now you can only judge it game by game. But he's getting these results. He's somewhat got that monkey off the player's back.
Well, yeah. Again, this is nothing specific on Mick McDermott, but listen to more, to successful managers over the years, and sometimes you just need a new voice in the changing room. Sometimes you need to freshen things up. It's my personal opinion that there was something more of a malaise in the Glentoran squad than simply the injuries. There were some players who just weren't at the races, Peter. Their form had gone off the boil, and it remains to be seen if Rodney can now get the best out of them, because unfortunately Mick wasn't. And again, you've got to say that Niall McGinn, the arrival of Niall McGinn, can go one of two ways. It seems to have been brilliant. Now, not only is he a good footballer, Peter, but he don't like being patronised, but he's a real good bloke, good football man, good guy to have around the change rooms, bit of crack about him, decent, feet in the ground, no airs and graces about him. And that'll have helped undoubtedly as well.
There will be somewhat of a batten down the hatches approach. Right now, Glentoran know, after looking like potentially the runaway champions earlier on in the season, they are saying they're behind the 8 ball is an understatement. A lot of people have somewhat ruled them out. Clearly, we're not even close to being mathematically impossible right now, but they've got a lot of games to make up. They've got a lot of points to make up. That win against Crusaders on Monday could be vital in how the rest of their season now goes. Let's hit the main talking point, one of the big headlines coming out. 2 goals for Shane McCartan. He's a player they missed for all the weeks that he was out with suspension. But the first goal is surrounded in controversy. The handball, should it have been picked out by the referee, goes in for a diving header, and the hand's in there somewhere. How do you feel Crusaders fans look at the referee's performance on Monday?
Well, they'll be furious, of course. I mean, everybody, we know it was a handball. I mean, Shea, I think, has come out and admitted it. I did look at it, and I looked at replays, Peter. And one thing I'll say is that the referee was kind of in line as such, and the Crusaders defender would have maybe obscured his vision. So, in fairness to the referee, I'm not sure he could have known 100% that it was a handball, but I would have thought his assistants could have helped him out, with a different angle. So it shouldn't have stood in my book. The referee, I would give him a bit of a bye-ball, but the referee and team between them, I think they should have spotted it.
We obviously have our own certain views when we look back at it from the camera angles. I feel very sympathetic towards the referee. That doesn't take anything away from the frustration from anybody associated with Crusaders when it comes to that goal. But looking at it numerous times, first time, second time, watching it raw, I must admit it could be missed. He dives in. I don't think that in a snapshot that is blatant. And as you alluded to, if you're the referee and a goal goes in and you're going to chalk it off, in that situation that was in, you have to be 100% sure. And I don't know, maybe the linesman should be able to make that call. That's why they're in that position. But if the referee said that he couldn't 100% decipher if there was a hand in the lead up to that goal, I don't think it's blatant enough where you can go, how did he miss it? But these are the breaks. It's frustrating, and Glens fans will say, for once, it's fallen to them.
Well, I think that's what Shea said. I don't know if it. I'm not too sure if it balances out or whatever. Of course, Glenn Mendel said if the tables were turned, Crusaders fans would be saying the same thing as well. Looking back to previous semi-finals and cup competitions and penalty shootouts and whatnot, sometimes you got to just take these things in the chin. Football is not a perfect game, no matter what the attempts of VAR and whatever else at the higher echelons. It's never going to be a perfect game. And sometimes you just got to take these things in the chin. And it's how you deal with the adversity. If you feel sorry for yourself and feel down and think everybody's out to get us, then it'll work against you. But if you take it on the chin and say that's football and, roll your sleeves up and get stuck in, maybe it can work for you. Cruel one, though. I have to say, Peter, yes, here, and we're sort of both agreeing that maybe it was a difficult one for the referee. But, I wouldn't like to think that our refereeing officials or teams around the grounds would say, yes, in that situation, none of us would be able to see it. I think it should have been found out.
Yeah, I think that's a time of reflection for sure. And one thing I also want to talk about, I put out a graphic last week, and it was as we approach the end of the season now, and we look at these top 6 battles right now, and I wanted to figure out who is winning out here. And in that table that I put together and I put out, up until now, Crusaders were the team on top of the table when it comes to games between the top 6. In the big games, Crusaders are the ones that are top of that mini table. But right now, they're not top of the table. In fact, they're a couple of points away from the top. The phrase that has been associated with the club this season has been flying under the radar. And I guess that comes from the fact that despite there being some real big highs for Crusaders, particularly against Linfield and others and against Glentoran and other big games, there's too many slips along the way that's somewhat put them further than they would like to be when it comes to fighting for the title this year.
Yes, I've spoke to Stephen Baxter a couple of weeks ago about this, about looking forward, about playing, Glentoran and then, Linfield back to back almost. And he sort of said, and he said it before, he's not particularly worried about the big games. It's the smaller games against your Carricks and Dungannons where he slips up, particularly away from home, Glenavon as well. And that would be a concern for me, Peter, because if you want to win a title, you have to do the business against the smaller teams. Okay, not 100%. But you look at Linfield, ruthless machine, big teams, big top 6, bottom 6. Not necessarily this season, but I'm talking about in the last few years under David Healy, they've been a machine. And it also harks to maybe a sort of you'd have question marks about the mental strength and approach, maybe from Crusaders players or any other team that's doing well against big teams and slipping up against lower teams. Why can the players do it against the big teams and then, it must be a concentration thing or maybe a confidence thing? Or
it's funny you mentioned Linfield because they're almost the complete opposite. They are somewhat almost perfect against the bottom 6 sides this year. The only time they've dropped points was, I believe, that famous game away to Carrick earlier on in the season. But when it comes to facing off against the top teams, they are bottom. They are 6 of 6, and that's mainly due to settling for draws or not getting the job done in some of the big games. They've had their big victories, no doubt. And there's been times when I've seen Crusaders and I felt, and it might be because I was prisoner of the moment, and I just looked at them and I saw how great they can be, how free-flowing they can be, how they just put the fear of God in some defences. But then there's the odd game where it's the Ballymena at home, it's the other Carrick game where Paul Healy gets sent off, where it just somewhat falls apart. Is it perhaps, and you're not going to completely outrun everybody, is it a squad thing perhaps? Because Crusaders have such a strong 11 to 14 players and they've had a lot of injuries, that's clear. But is it perhaps when they have these big games, there's such big highs and they've run themselves so much into the ground that when they go to a ground that perhaps isn't set up, be it the surface or how big the pitch is set up, that's just where teams have been able to get at them when the pressure isn't as on as much?
Yeah, and I think one thing that's sort of been suggested to me as well around Seaview is that it's not trying to be disparaging, when you talk about lesser teams or bottom 6 or not the big teams. One factor that some around Seaview point to as a possible factor is a lack of atmosphere at the big games. the Oval, Solitude, Windsor, Crusaders playing the big teams at home. It's a great atmosphere, and the players buy into that. It seems to be that if there's not such a great atmosphere, then it can maybe drop a level or two, which again is worrying. I don't want to deride Crusaders too much at all. I mean, they have surprised me, I must say. You look at their midfield and you think, oh, are they aging? But I mean, Philip Lowry's been absolutely phenomenal this season. Same for Jordan Forsyth. Decky Cadell, since he's come back out of retirement, has been superb as well. The old guard is delivering as such. The defence is much better now. Even though they're having to chop and change this year's defence, they're much more comfortable with each other than in previous years, where because they had to chop and change the central defensive partnership, they lost points and they lost momentum. It didn't net, but now you've got. I mean, Daniel Armour's a great player, and Chris Hegarty, when he's fit, and he is fit a lot these days, he's superb as well. So that's helped them a lot as well. The consistency, are they consistent enough to make a real tilt for the title? Who knows? They've surprised me a bit before now, but as long as we go.
They have 5 big games to end the season, no matter what. Where if they're getting wins, they're taking points off the other, and that's what I thought when I looked upon them. That if they can keep their nose relatively clean against other teams, they are as best poised as anybody to take on a Larne and a Glentoran and a Linfield back to back to back. One thing that we look at Crusaders from an external point of view, and what's been some of their brilliant success, has been the goal scorers and some of the big strikers over the past decade. There has been lots of talk this month. The window is now shut, of course, that Matthew Fitzpatrick was the belle of the ball. He was the glint in Stephen Baxter's eyes. It didn't happen this window. Did that ever come close, or was it mere sideway glances and it just wasn't to be?
Well, there were discussions. There were discussions for sure. Now Glenavon are being a bit touchy about this. They're insisting that there was no bid made. Now, whether you're dancing on a pinhead, and does that mean that there was no official bid made in writing? My understanding, and very, very clear understanding from Seaview, is there were 3 verbal offers made for Matthew Fitzpatrick. The long and the short of it is that Crusaders were prepared to offer 40,000, maybe plus a player, and Glenavon were not interested in 40,000 plus any of Crusaders' players at all. So Crusaders, had a couple of nibbles. I mean, they actually inquired about him well before Christmas, but no, they had pretty much resigned themselves from a Crusaders' point of view. Glenavon were talking about, they didn't mention the figure of 100 grand, but they pointed to Shane McCartan and Lee Bonus and said, well, if they're worth, if that's what they're worth, what is Fitzy worth? It's a moot point. So, no, I think Crusaders accepted it was dead later on. They knew Glenavon were not going to accept 40,000 pounds. And in fairness, I mean, from Glenavon's point of view, what's Gary Hamilton going to do with 40 grand or 60 grand or 70 grand? Like, where's he going to get a Matthew Fitzpatrick, for that, really? So it sort of shows you how the landscape has changed, particularly, in the transfer market these days. It's a lot more cagey. Clubs are signing up players longer, 3-4 years instead of 2 years, because they become assets.
They have.
And because they know that if other clubs want to sign their players, they're going to have to pay good readies for it.
Well, an asset that is no longer playing in the black and red. It happened a week and a half ago or so, was Johnny McMurray. He leaves for the championship. He returns to Warrenpoint Town. A fee paid there. From my point of view, it looks as though the New Year form of Dean Ebbe somewhat made that easier, facilitated Johnny McMurray moving on. It ultimately just didn't work out for him over in North Belfast.
I wouldn't necessarily say that. I mean, he'll always be remembered for that last gasp winner in the Irish Cup final last year. I mean, Johnny is a particular animal, a very good player. I thought that Johnny was trying too hard when he first joined Crusaders. I thought he really liked going to Seaview. I thought he was trying too hard to impress. Then there was the chopping and changing, like, was it Jordan Owens, Adam Leckie, then Dean Ebby came in and Johnny came in. And I think Johnny maybe felt he was down the pecking order behind, certainly Adam Leckie. Um, Crusaders needed goals. You know, they wanted more goals from their front men as such. Now they've got plenty of goals from midfield and elsewhere. So Stephen made the move, put the two strikers on the list. I think it was a bit of a wake up call for Dean, maybe. You know, I think it was a bit of
For
a
sure.
reality bite situation. Now, yes, he's improved and shown a bit of form, and there is a good player in him. I mean, the boys rave about him in training. They say he's absolutely phenomenal, but we haven't seen it translate to the pitch as yet. Um, Johnny. Johnny's at a stage where I think he just wants to be happy in his game. You know, people might raise eyebrows at him going down to the championship, but he's played under Barry Gray before. He was happy playing under Barry Gray. Johnny has a family now, and I think the part-time game suited him more. So I wish him well. I'm sorry it didn't work out for Johnny. You know, you could say, could he have been given more of a chance? Possibly, yes. But, you know, like Stephen's been chopping and changing every striker, so you could say that everybody, none of them have had a.
At a club like Crusaders, it's somewhat, what have you done for me lately? And you talk about Dean Ebbe, and it felt as though his season never really got going. And in his fleeting appearances at the start, he wasn't making a big impact. And then recently, yes, it starts against championship opposition in Dergview when he was thrown into the team at the Irish Cup, but he's got the odd goal in the league. He's the latest one to be given the baton and go make this space in the team yours. And for now, there's a lot of games to go, but disappointing result for Crusaders. But they will wipe their nose clean and want to get back at it.
Another wee thing just before we finish on the Crusader striking situation, they were, I mean, the Crews were sort of, if they didn't get somebody in, they were happy well, they're thinking of maybe promoting Jay Boyd, you know, who's an up-and-coming striker coming through the ranks at the club. He hasn't featured heavily for them at all. He's been promoted to the first team squad, and they like the look of him, and they might try and ease him in the second half of the season.
Well, I alluded to it at the start there. Jordan Stewart, all our talk about, was he going to stay at Linfield? What was going to happen? Bids. And Matthew Fitzpatrick is staying at Glenavon. And he's got a new friend in Jordan Stewart, a blockbuster deadline day loan deal. Online, Linfield fans were hoping, it seems, that Jordan Stewart was going to come back into the team. He's had fleeting appearances over the past number of weeks, and he was going to help unlock some of these bigger teams. He was going to be the creative spark that they feel they have been lacking. What a signing. Yes, only the end of the season, but what a signing for Glenavon. This could really secure their hopes for 7th place. What a player.
Yes, little sucker. He's a fantastic dynamo of a player, always has been. Particular sort of a player, not burdened by self-doubt. You know, it's a huge coup. Let's start from Glenavon's point of view, first of all. Massive, massive coup for Guy Hamilton. Huge. I mean, I bet you he cannot believe this is all his Christmas has come in one. Now, because it's so late, it kind of caught me on the hop a little bit, but it speaks of something deeper behind the scenes at Linfield, in my humble opinion. And having thought about it, it may actually be a cute, shrewd move by David Healy and Linfield.
It really is, because looking at where he could have went to, Glenavon aren't going to be in the top 6, realistically, when it comes to points. They aren't going to be there. But right now, they have, I think, 5 or 6 games left against the top 6. It's like, here you go, Glenavon, go wreck somebody else's season for us, please. Because it wasn't working out at Linfield. There clearly been a disagreement about a transfer last summer. Did they ever get over that? We don't know. But there's a reason why he's at Glenavon and not another top 6 team.
Of course, there's no way David Healy would allow him to go to another top 6 team. And I think that Jordan maybe played in the Irish Cup as well, which was prescient possibly and clever as well. Jordan Stewart, going back to last summer, my understanding of it, Jordan just wants to play football. Yes, he thinks he should be the star man in any team. Whether you agree with that is another thing. I personally think he's a smashing player, and if you can handle him and know how to keep him happy and get him playing in the right position, he's an asset to any team, as I say. No matter what, listen, Linfield put on a brave front last year. It was typical Linfield. Nothing to see here. Everything's all right. I'm certainly of the personal belief that David Healy would not have been unhappy to see Jordan Stewart leave last summer. David will deny that, of course, but that is my view from having spoken to maybe other clubs that were interested in signing Jordan Stewart last year. They thought business could be done until it came down to towards the end of it, and then there was sort of a message got out as they do. Listen, no matter what you offer, it's not going to happen. All right, we're not selling them. Now, Sucker's been injured largely. Yes, there were hints before Christmas, before January, that one or two of the clubs might go back to him, but Linfield were again saying, listen, the line from Linfield was nobody's leaving because we have injuries to contend with. So we might bring one or two in, but nobody's leaving the club really. And then all of a sudden, and basically at the 11th hour, Jordan Stewart, smashing little Taro, leaves the club. Now, again, I could be wrong, and Linfield will deny this, but it tells me that everything wasn't right behind the scenes. With I suspect, Jordan would have been unhappy at not playing. David Healy has said himself that he has not a love-hate relationship, but he knows exactly what Jordan's like. Jordan will do David's head in to get playing games. David's okay with that to a limit. We'll find out in the wash in the coming weeks what exactly did happen, but it's clear to me that why would you let Jordan Stewart go now in a season like this? Why would you turn it on its head? What's the rationale from Linfield's? What benefit is there for Linfield to letting Jordan Stewart go?
The cries from Linfield fans is that surely he is better in the blue shirt of Linfield if he is healthy in our title charge than he is being a potential scud against some of the other teams in a Glenavon shirt. And what you are suggesting is, well, if it's not a football ability thing and you're happy enough to pay the wage, if the wage isn't an issue either, then it's better for him to be elsewhere and let the team concentrate on things. And him having frustrations about not being in the starting 11 consistently, this has bled on to last season as well. So this has been a long time frustration of his that seems to have potentially boiled over.
And fair, listen, you've got to be fair about these things. It is possible that David Healy has made the decision. He's listened to Jordan, chomping at the bit. I want to play gaffer. I want to play boss. I should be blah, blah, blah. Maybe it is that David has thought, well, listen, you're not in my plans. But I'm not going to keep you on the sidelines. I'll let you go and get games. But either way, it seems to me that, that Jordan's days at Linfield are, maybe numbered. As I say, why would you not? What benefit is there to letting Jordan go out to any club? Why would you not keep him at Linfield? Because he could be an asset. If you suffer other injuries, Joel Cooper, Kirk Miller, some of the flair players, he's ideal to come in. So what's going on behind the scenes that makes it better for Linfield as a team that he goes elsewhere? And we've already talked about it. David is very, very shrewd, as the people at Linfield are. They're thinking, well, if he's going to go, we'll make sure he doesn't damage us. And in fact, we'll make sure he could damage other rivals.
And the other side of that, if he goes on, I'm talking about Stewart here, if he goes on a McMenamin-esque wide player run that we saw at the start of the season with him, if he gets anywhere close to, let's say, 10 goals between now and the end of the season, we talked about it on the podcast we first had at the end of August, figures of 100 grand, 125 grand. I don't think for a player who hasn't played for relatively consistently for 4 or 5 months, he's going to be looking for that price. 7-8 goals, looking great for half a season. All of a sudden that value potentially returns and you have a player on your hands again that could be an asset if you don't see him at Linfield.
We're talking here about where will he go next season, will he be at Linfield, whatever else. What you've got to bear in mind is who the manager will be at Linfield next year. Will it be David Healy? Will it be somebody else? If it's David Healy, I suspect Sucker's maybe going to play elsewhere. If it's not David Healy, I would think that the new manager, if there was a change of manager, would certainly want Jordan Stewart to be at the club. So that's what I'm saying is that's just the context that you're trying to, speculate about, because we don't know what will happen in the future.
Linfield are on top of the league right now. They haven't had a real run at the summit all season. Is Healy under threat again?
No, not from within. No, not at all. Again, to encompass an earlier point, none of the top six have struck forth and really, all the top six are dropping points here and there. David Healy, is he under pressure? No, but David Healy has ambitions to manage elsewhere. Loves Linfield, his heart's there, but he's ambitious. He knows, familiarity breeds contempt. You're at Linfield too long and you get hounded. Either half the fans love you and half the fans want rid of you. David Jeffrey and Roy Coyle are obviously examples. So he wants to try his luck elsewhere. He didn't think he would be here at this stage with Linfield. He thought he would do a job and move on to England. That hasn't proved as easy for him, but he will, in my opinion, move on from Linfield at some stage. If he won the league this year, I could see him leaving.
Almost an impeccable record, and how if keeping a Latvian side from scoring for 2 minutes more could have changed the outlook for him and the club. Let's finish off this little game. If it was to be the case, because I won't talk to you for a couple of months here in the podcast, unfortunately. If there was to be a case where Healy was to move away, we've seen today that Kenny Shields has left the Northern Ireland women's team. There's on the lookout for a new under-21s manager. Not saying that's where he'd move on, but is there a clear succession plan of who might be the next infield manager? Is there a clear shortlist who you think they would be likely one of the first people that's getting a call?
I'm sure there is. I'm sure there have been discussions informally behind the scenes at Linfield with certain board members. But at the same time, the board are full square behind David Healy. He's some very, very strong allies, and rightly so. Listen, his record, as you said, speaks for itself. If he goes, who would you be looking at? Obvious one would be Oran Kearney, wouldn't it? You'd have to think he played for the Blues. He's doing a fantastic job up at Coleraine. That's who I would certainly be looking at. Whether Oran would want to leave, I don't know. Circumstances Oran has. He's happy enough up there in the North Coast at the minute, but he doesn't want to stay there forever. Maybe they would go the way of an ex-international again. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to pick names out of the blue, but Gareth McCauley, I don't think it would be him, but that sort of figure, Grant McCann, maybe, I don't know. I don't think Grant would want to come back, but that's who they might possibly look at. But as I say, now I think, to be fair, at Linfield, like we're putting the cart before the horse. They're quite happy with David. Quite happy. There's no talk about David leaving dishonourably, or he's always said he'll try and do things right. So I think at the minute, everybody at Windsor's just saying, let's see how this season pans out, because winning the title and not winning the title could be a huge difference.
I'm glad we could play along. And one thing I'd also say is that we've said how the Irish League has moved on considerably over the past decade or so, and League of Ireland has been able to draw on managers that just aren't within Irish circles. They're drawing on sometimes League Two or conference managers or people who are doing somewhat on the fringes of Scotland. If you were to see Healy move on, particularly to a bigger job, the same way that they're attracting players, you could see a manager go, this could be a way that I could jump off and push on. Like, Paul Cook has managed a lot of teams after managing in the League of Ireland, and you could just see the same way players coming through, managers could go, that could be my jumping off point. So it might be an unlikely name if that was to come, but of course he's the man in the seat right now. Well, he isn't sitting in the seat because he's been suspended for a couple of games. It's been George McCartney on the sidelines, and he was there to watch a demolition job of Portadown. It's not looking too great for the Mid-Ulster men.
No, it's not. With the best will in the world, I think in any walk of life when things aren't going well, you've got to stand in front of the mirror and take responsibility for what maybe you've done yourself. Portadown got rid of Matthew Tipton and brought Paul Doolan in. I was surprised at that, I must say. Listen, I've worked with Paul. He's a capable manager, he's a good football man, but he'd been out of the scene, out of management for a while, not at the coalface, and certainly didn't know the Irish League at all. And it's modern guys. What I mean by that, he does know the Irish League, but he didn't know the Irish League, the modern players, the current players. So over the summer, he brought in a raft of players from outside the jurisdiction, and they were on paper, Peter, they're not dummies. Like, they've got decent experience here and there. Didn't work. Ports were dreadful. Now, I'm looking at that and I'm saying, right, they've got rid of Paul Doolan. Paul Doolan's brought a whole raft of players in from Scotland, England, down south, whatever. And they're not dummies on paper, but just Paul couldn't get the best out of them. So I would have thought that maybe it maybe brought somebody in who could work with players from outside the jurisdiction, and get them to work. But they went for Niall Curry, fans' favourite, local boy, done good. And he was always going to do the complete opposite. Whether they would admit it or not, the good folk of Portadown, they're not stupid. There may be no realising that, okay, if Niall can't keep us up, well, he's the best man for the job to get us back up if we do go down. And I think that I can understand that's good logic. I think they were maybe hoping for that dead cat bounce, bringing in a new manager. It didn't happen before the transfer window, and then Niall did what Niall does, and we'll have to see. Going to be a long, hard season for Port. I think they'll be very lucky to escape relegation. Good men of Mid Ulster will cry foul about the administrative error. There's no water in that whatsoever, Peter. And I'll say here now, anybody, including the manager, who's pointing the finger of blame at the media for this, is simply tilting at windmills. They're living in la la land. I have great sympathy for Portadown at the time, and I voiced this. I said, now hold on a second. Knowing the way our game here is, Peter, like, we're not the Premier League. Things happen. There's part-time players maybe leaving work at 5 o'clock to play a Friday night game, and things can happen, family things, car accident, whatever, and I had tremendous sympathy. I said, this isn't fair. But then I was reassured that all Premiership clubs now, basically the way they operate is they're there 2 hours before. The players are told to be there 2 hours before kickoff, so that if something does happen, they have plenty of time to rectify matters or rejig, do what they have to do and protect themselves. It's unfortunate that Portadown transgressed the laws here. I mean, I think their case was thrown out twice. So again, what we're talking about earlier on, adversity, do you suck it up and take it on the chin and say, okay, well, we made a rookie here, let's put it behind us and move on fresh? Or do you keep pointing at the fingers at people who are out to get you, like the league and the IFA and the media? That's nonsense. I mean, that's pure nonsense. So on that front, I don't have sympathy for Portadown.
I echo a lot of what you said there. We had Keith on the podcast last week. If you want to hear it as in-depth podcast can be about that, he was the man. He was at the centre of it. We went for absolutely ages talking about it and talking about Portadown there. And it's just looking back at the history. It's up to Portadown now. If they are to go down and if they are to cry foul, well, then you have to be within 3 points or within whatever it is, 6 points of Newry to say that it could have made a difference.
Let's be absolutely clear here. Portadown have form in this front.
Well, I was just going to say that. I was just going to say, when you look back and go, again, we'll not get into the man in the blue coat as we talked about last week, whatever happened there, but going all the way back to the formation of this 12-team league, they're 15 minutes late for the application, relegated. Last time that they were relegated, it was due in part to a 12-point deduction that they got connected to the player Peter McMahon in regards to whatever the review was there. I really should know the details around that, but that was a big factor. They couldn't sign any professional players at that time. If you're a Portadown fan, you're just pulling your hair out that, look, they've been bad beyond belief for the past 18 months if you're a fan watching it, but when things behind the scenes keep happening, it's even more frustrating.
It is, Peter, but and again, this is an area where I actually have a lot of sympathy with Portadown and other clubs. The long and the short of it is that a lot of Irish League clubs still just don't have the resources in terms of people, people who will give of their time to do the job. And I'm sure that people at Portadown and other clubs will tell you the work that goes on behind the scenes is exhausting and you need to have time. So I understand where Portadown and other clubs may struggle simply to have the man hours to overlook all these things. But there's help there, because with the best will in the world, there have been things that are going wrong, and there are good people around Portadown, and they are paying a couple of quid now. Let's be honest about that as well. So they're not on their uppers, but there are aspects of the game that need to be tidied up, and that's fair enough. But don't go hurling wolf and trying to blame other people. Take it on the chin, learn from it, move on.
And to add a point, parties that are not here to say one way or the other. Look, all those three examples there are different management teams. They're different people behind the scenes. They're all a multitude of factors. And, for Portadown, they are trying to turn things around on the pitch after investing in a different type of player at the start of the season. A lot of them are away right now. it's unique because they talked about trying to sign players and bring them in, and now they've brought in, after all this hunt for a striker, they've brought in four since last August, with Alan O'Sullivan on loan from Warren Point, the latest player coming in. You have Benny Guion from Dundela, Carfriel comes in, and of course the real marquee signer for them is Paul McElroy coming in with, it's been reported, a fee. Are these players for this year to keep them up potentially, and then we'll see what happens? Are these like a 6 month give it a go type thing, or is this somewhat building your squad for next year if they were unfortunate to go in the championship? It's probably a mix of both, but it's from an external point of view, you must look at it and go, if you, and it's for any club really, you make a commitment to stay in the league, to bring the type of players in and give them the type of wages. But if you drop down to the championship, it's one of the most dramatic financial swaps you could probably have. Portadown had, whatever, the guts of 900 Linfield fans potentially there coming in through their gates. That's the second time this season they've had them through. You might have 10 games and you might not get even 900 away fans. Like, that is a big drop off to then push through and get through and try and get back up again. It's a real, and look, we've seen Warren Point struggle to get back up. They could potentially make a run and be up. That looks likely, but all these players coming in are coming in for something to attract them to play for Portadown, and it's seeing if it's a stick and plaster to roll the dice, or could this be the cavalry that comes?
I think Paul McElroy is a very good acquisition, I must say. I mean, he's a player with quality about him. Whether he's consistent enough is maybe the only question mark for clubs that he's been at previously, but I certainly rate the lad quite highly, and I think he's probably, he's somebody that you could maybe pin your hopes on. I don't want to place too much pressure on Paul, but the likes of Alan O'Sullivan from Warren Point. Alan O'Sullivan's a player I've always liked. He's got a physical presence. He can cause havoc, but there's not enough product with him, certainly in the top flight.
He had a great season like 3 years ago where I'm sure he got double figures for Warren Point. Again, I'll not be specific because I don't have it to hand, but yeah, you're absolutely right. That's based on that form. Can he come in and change things up?
Why is Barry Gray letting him go when he's pushing for for promotion to the Premiership?
It's
like, I mean, I'm not asking. It's it's a rhetorical question, but you've got to ask yourself that. So, but I mean, in terms of the drop for the championship, listen, those players will have signed. I mean, they're not stupid. They know what they're walking into. They know they're signing for a club at the bottom of the league that's kind of somewhat marooned. They know that there's a distinct possibility they may end up playing in the championship, and they must have accepted it. They've signed a contract that they must honour with Portadown, and Portadown have offered a contract that they must, honour with the players, and I don't think that's a problem at all.
Pinging through teams at the bottom that Portadown will hope and have their fingers and toes and everything crossed is the likes of Dungannon, Smith and Newry to hold tight. Dungannon didn't hold tight against one of the informed teams in the league, Coleraine. I'm waxing lyrical about them because they're getting really tight at the back, but they have great squad depth up top in particular, in midfield, in the wide areas. There's a lot of rotation, sometimes for suspension, sometimes for injuries. And another great win for Coleraine. 2 goals for me. Maybe the 5th goal could have been Shevlin's, but 2 goals for me, best striker in the league. Matthew Shevlin has it all. A brilliant performance from him on Saturday in a 3-0 win over Dungannon.
Yeah, Matty Shevlin, super young player, super lad. Again, I don't want to blow smoke too much, but I'm a big fan of Warren Kearney and what his managerial capabilities are, and look what he's done. He's brought Matthew on from being a prospect to now being, as you say, certainly currently the best striker in the league. He just looking at the goals at the weekend there, maybe the defenders could have got a bit closer, but still he has the predatory instincts to just put them away.
That's the one. From seeing him live a few times, what Shevlin has, a little edge he has compared to a lot of strikers. Whereas even when the ball comes in and it looks as though he's not going to get on it, he's just able to muscle his way in to get a little touch, get a wee knock in when it's one-on-one. He wins a lot of one-on-one battles, either on the ground or in the air, and he has a bit of pace and a bit of composure that really sets him, for me, above the rest. And he's got plenty of years in this league, and just everything about him as a centre forward. I could talk all podcasts about him. He's brilliant, and he's having a great season so far for Korea.
He reminds me a wee bit of Curtis Allen in some respects.
He does. You're right.
Maybe not outside the box, but running into the box and in and around the box, it's just instinctive. It's just instinctive. It's just a knack of knowing where to be and how to get. And some players have that. I cast my mind back to a player called Michael Halliday, played for Glentoran 20 years ago, and he's still playing, actually, Michael, I think. Down at Bangor, I believe.
Down at Bangor.
Good fella. And I would have had not arguments with Roy Coyle as manager at the time. Roy Coyle was flying high and had a load of different strikers to call upon. And he maybe wouldn't have, he himself mightn't have put Michael in the absolute top drawer in terms of his technical ability. But I would say, but Roy, he gets goals and he gets big goals. He gets them off his backside, off a shin, off whatever, but he's just got that instinct to be in the right place at the right time in the box. And Matthew Chevy has it as well.
One man who says, excuse me, I've been doing this for years and years and years. He's got a new contract right in his back pocket, and he was one of many players that inspired Cliftonville onto a 4-0 victory at home. Cliftonville getting it done when they need to. Of course, I'm talking about Joe Gormley. What a goal. The way he took the ball, spun in the box, and dinked it into the net. He has class. As if it was ever in doubt that Joe Gormley has class in the box.
Chapeau. I was at the game, and it was an incredible move, right from Ronan Doherty to Rory Hill, hooked it across. And you're watching the cross going across, and that's deep, and it's just too big for Joe, and he'll have to, you're thinking he'll turn and he'll hair it down and he'll recycle the move, not at all. Those big go gadget legs, bingo, plucked it out of the air, and it's just, again, instinct. Peter hooked it past Sean O'Neill. It was a thing of beauty to watch.
When we look at some of the big classic Cliftonville teams over the past years, some of those title charges, he's been a real key figure to that. We talk about transfers in and out. Perhaps the biggest moment of the transfer window for Cliftonville, it's not somebody that come in, it's not anybody that went out, it's the fact that Sean Moore, the new starlet of the league, 17 years old, he's going to be here, he's going to be playing in the red of Cliftonville for the rest of this season. He could be a key cog. If there's red and white ribbons around the Gibson Cup at the end of the season, he should be one of the first people in line to have a good look at that, because he has been key in some big moments this season.
Well, he has. He hasn't been as influential as other members of the team, hasn't played as much as other members of the team, and it's a balancing act here, Peter. No doubt the lad has talent. Smashing player. On the one hand, Cliftonville are sort of, they're urging pressmen and journalists to say, here, listen, stop hyping him up. He's only a wee lad, and, you're putting too much pressure on him. And then they're looking $250,000 off West Ham or whatever the case may be, and I get that. I get that. He was never leaving the club in the January transfer window. I mean, the soundings from Cliftonville were like, listen, if somebody comes in and makes an offer for him, they might buy him, but he's staying here on loan. That'll be part of the deal until the end of the season. They were absolutely adamant, and rightly so, and they've carried it through. Yeah, there's something really, really enjoyable, lovely to watch about Sean Moore. He's got that languid style. Everything seems so, he seems so composed on the ball, and he almost looks slow in what he's doing, but so effective, if you know what I mean, because of that easy going left peg of his that just feathers the ball into the net and whatever. Yeah, he's a smasher. There's no doubt about it. But he let's not overhype it. I mean, he's a great prospect that's come in, but he certainly won't have the influence of Levi Ives or the Hales or Joe Gormley. And just on Joe Gormley, Peter, there's this Willie won't he. Cliftonville were going to offer him a 1-year deal. Joe laughed at it. No chance. He wanted a 2-year deal. Certain people online were saying, user, it's just the usual Willie won't they? I got bored with it quite early on and said, listen, Joe's going to sign for Clifton at the end of the season. We've been done this dance before. The thing that maybe spooked him or spooked maybe people in his camp was the fact that Paddy signed David Parkhouse. Who Paddy would know through his Derry connections. I think Paddy played with his uncle Stephen, who won the title with the Glens years ago. And it was a bit of an odd one. I mean, because I don't know if I was asking you, Peter, who would you have as a striker? Who would you pick right now? And I'm talking about bearing in mind the ages. David Parkhouse or Joe Gormley?
It's squad building, isn't it? It's that, do you commit to the future, but then do you want what you have right now? You know, Parkhouse had an incredible amount of potential and had a brilliant run with Ballymena and looked sharp for his time with Derry, but I can see it. Sometimes you got to bring in the new racehorse when they're not ready, and you've got to develop, and sometimes you got to say goodbye when there's a bit of value. So do you want to play chicken in that scenario? I'm not the one to say, but sometimes these teams have got to go for it while they have the opportunity.
Well, all's well that ends well at Solitude, and it did end well. And David Parkhouse did get off. Got scored his debut goal, and hopefully that'll work out. I suspect we'll probably see the best of David when he gets a full pre-season. You're right. I think he's one who's bought for the future.
Well, absolutely. That's a great team to be in. You talk about all those fantastic attacking players. You're gonna get opportunities when you're in a team like Cliftonville. Talking about bonkers things that happened on the pitch. I think most other weeks this would have went straight to the top of the running order. Carrick Rangers won, Glenavon won. They both end with 10 men each. There's a sending off for Stuart King. This was a bit of a bonkers game, but has all the blood and thunder that you expect from an Irish League game as well.
Aye, yes, yes, yes. 20 years ago, you wouldn't have had any red cards in that game.
You know what? Let's get on it. I know exactly what you mean. I don't know if looking at that, and if it was at the other side of the pitch, not on the side of the pitch where it was right in front of the team's dugouts, would the referee be jumping in with a red card 9 minutes into the game? I'm talking about Kyle Cherry getting sent off within the first 10 minutes for Carrick Rangers.
I have a funny take on this, and we discussed it in the Solitude press box there. When it came up on the BBC run, my initial reaction was it wasn't a red card, because I could see, yes, Cherry went in with a high foot, but if you've played football, I think it was a safe challenge because he was just far enough away that he wasn't going to go through, in my opinion. That said, it was mentioned to me by a colleague, what's the difference between that and Sean Moore's red card, which I did agree was a red card, because my rationale would have been, well, it could have been dangerous. And the only way to make sure that, you protect your players is by clamping down on these rash tackles. The second red card, I didn't get to see it too much, Peter, I must be honest with you, because the way I looked at it, I couldn't really see what he did. There was, I don't know, was there an elbow or was it a wee fly dig? I don't know. I can't really say too much about that, but at the same time, I didn't see. Again, I didn't see anything overt. Maybe the referee spotted it, and then the tangle with Gary Hamilton and Stuart King at the something and nothing really, for me.
What might be key there, and look, I don't have the referee's report. What could be key there is potentially what happens after that. What may have been said, but. A weird little interaction, of course. You're talking about Stuart King being sent off, where Gary subbed himself onto the game. He's played a role in that goal, reeling back the years or winding back the years, whatever. And then there's a bit of afters of the ball, and Gary kind of has his arm around the back of Stuart King. Stuart King had the ball underneath his own arm, and for a red card, referee must have seen or heard something, but
that's true. But on the face, I don't know. I didn't know. I don't know if Stuart said something. I'm only going on the pictures that I watched, and it was nothing really. Yes, it was a bit of a, bit of a sort of a skirmish. But the way I saw it is, those two guys would know each other. They would know each other.
It was a second yellow leading to a red.
I accept that. Yeah. They didn't continue on with each other after. They sort of disengaged, and that was kind of it. Maybe Stuart said something out of turn. I don't know, but I wouldn't have. It was. Listen. I would have just waved play on. I mean, at that stage, the game was so hotly contested, that I think both teams would have been just looking to score goals rather than worry about something nothing that happened on it in the dugout. So, again, I have an issue sometimes with the modern referee, not just in Northern Ireland here, about applying the letter of the law rather than the spur of the law. I think a referee like Ray Krangle or a referee years ago like Herbie Barr, somebody would have said, "Hey lads, knock out in the head, move on, end of story."
I would always have a preference watching our league to have the games play on. Is it, let it smooth out? Why are we giving out a yellow card here? Is it for safety, or is it for being an inch over what the law says? I would rather see the games go on and those yellows and reds be for clear punishments. Carrick Rangers will be ultimately disappointed by the end. They let Glenavon come in, sucker punch them with the goal. It's probably a result that doesn't really help either team.
Aye, you'd have thought that Glenavon would have been, I'm sure Glenavon would have fancied themselves to beat Carrick. And on paper, all right, we know that they're injury ravaged, so that's maybe a bit of a leveler. Yeah, two gutsy teams playing below their capabilities, in my opinion, certainly of late. Maybe not earlier on the season, and I don't think either of the managers would disagree with that at all. So they're not scrapping for their lives, but they're giving their all. They want to make things right for what they've done earlier on the season, which is ship too many points.
And they want to be in with a shout of getting that 7th place and at least being in the hat, for getting involved with the European playoffs. See if they can get frisky. And just while we're here, we can reflect on the moves by Carrick. Nenis Michaelitis came in earlier on in the window, but down within the wee hours of the transfer window there, James McLaughlin moves from Coleraine to Carrick. Is there a wee ex-Coleraine crew of players that are having a wee party time there at Carrick? I felt as though McLaughlin, he wasn't getting consistent time in the Coleraine team. He would have been a prime target for any of those teams looking to add reinforcements or looking to upgrade their striking force. He's in there at Carrick, and that could be a key man if they are to nick that 7th place.
Yeah, Carrick were trying to get James McLaughlin early doors, and they weren't on their own. There's no doubt about that. James McLaughlin appeared on the scene at Coleraine as one of the new wave that Owen was trying to harvest from the locale as such, the North Coast and that area. He's from Ballymoney. He came from an amateur background. He looked like a bit of an amateur when he arrived in the top flight. Yes, he had it, but I mean, listen, he sort of knuckled down and slimmed down a bit, and there's no doubt in his ability. Slipped down the packing order at Coleraine, wanted to play. Why did he go to Carrick and not on somewhere else? I don't know. What about geographical? If I don't know where James lives now, whether it's still in Ballymoney, it's maybe handier to get to Carrick than Glenavon. I don't know. But certainly a wee bit of a feather in the cap for Stuart King, who I must say I think is doing a fair job at Carrick. That might sound like I'm damning him with faint praise, but I'm not. I mean, I do like Stuart's enthusiasm, his connections, his work in the market. Yeah, I mean, he wanted strikers. He's got 2 James McLaughlin and Nenis Michaelitis, so it's good work done by him. It's over to the boys now to deliver the goods.
And we wrap up this Saturday by going to the Sunday game. Really, really massive 2 points dropped by Larne as they go down to the Newry Showgrounds and only come away with the 1 point. 0-0 it ends. Steve Maguire looked inspired at times in the Newry goal after having been on the other end of a couple of long range goals that he will like to forget, but this was one of his better days, and Newry make it work for them. They get a point, a big point for them. And for Larne, their lack of goals right now is somewhat going under the radar. They bring in a couple of players in January, but if they are to stick at the top, if they are to really push Cliftonville, who's currently in the driver's seat, they can't let games like this. These are the type of games where, one of your big strikers is going to have to step up and make it happen. And they got 2-0 against Portadown at home on the Tuesday game pass, but they are not firing them in the quantities they would probably like to be.
No, and it brings us round a conversation we're saying at the head of the discussion about Crusaders dropping silly points. Everybody's dropping silly points, Peter. Now, the thing about, excuse me, Lauren, is Has it been, has the balance been upset by the moves in the market in January? Before Christmas, Lee Bonus and Paul O'Neill, I thought they were flying, two excellent strikers. Some changes at Inver Park now since they brought Joe Thompson in, and they brought a striker in from. They brought about three players in from Scotland, if I'm
They
correct.
did indeed. They bring in also Joe Thompson, Maguire. Michael Glynn comes in, replaces Ben Doherty. So, and then you also have Andy Ryan coming in as a wide player from Hamilton Accies, and Jamie Partington from Grimsby. So, selection of players, BJ Banda's a bit of cover up top as well. So, they all have to be filtered in as
I
well.
think they needed cover for sure because, obviously at the start of the window as well, there were concerns that maybe Lee Bonus might be, there were rumours that, there might be a club coming in from him. I don't think they were necessarily founded, but still they did need cover. They knew they needed cover for the two boys as well. I'm not particularly worried about Lauren. I think they'll be there or thereabouts. I don't think they'll slip away. I think they had actually quite a strong January transfer window, all things considered. Went about their business quietly, picked up a little, for their point of view, hopefully a rough diamond here and there. And yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot to like about them. They were frustrated by Newry at the weekend last weekend. Stephen Maguire's a keeper. You mentioned there about the long range ones. Yeah, fair enough. But earlier on the season, I was very impressed with Stephen. I know he's a seasoned keeper, but there was a lot of games I thought he did very, very well for. And Newry did very well in as well. Generally, results haven't been what they should have been maybe at Newry. But talking to Darren last week, Darren was very upbeat. He thought that while they had lost games, the likes of Glentoran, they thought they'd performed quite well. He was buoyed by the fact that they'd claimed a point off Ballymena, and he thought that this would be something that they could build on. And QED, it was proven to be true. They were able to build on it by taking a very, very valuable point against Lauren. Again, there's a lot to like about Newry City. I'll be honest with you, Peter. Darren would be the first to admit that maybe they don't have the stars that other clubs have. Maybe don't have the same level of quality as other clubs have. And I understand that, much like Coleraine and Newry and whatever else, it's hard to attract. A lot of players are from Belfast, and a lot of players are attracted to clubs in Belfast. It's not always as easy to bring them down. So what Darren has done there is he's forged a band of brothers as such at Newry. They know him, he knows them. It's a very tight-knit club, and they're getting success out of that because what they might lose out on in terms of quality, they can make up for in togetherness.
It's Irish Cup 6th round weekend. This weekend, 8 games. Only the one Premiership team out. It's just we're missing Carrick, I believe, after losing out to Ballymena in a penalty shootout in the last round. So we've got 8 games. We'll not go through all of them in depth. Some of the big headline ones are the likes of Larne hosting Linfield, Cliftonville hosting Coleraine. You've got Glenavon hosting the Welders. Ballyclare goes to Institute in an Old Championship tie. Ballymena will hope not to be on the end of an embarrassing cup upset when they take on a Newington. Knockbreda host the Swifts. I'll be at that game. And then live via streaming, BBC, Bangor, host Crusaders. That's a great cup tie, isn't it, on Friday night?
Yeah. It's full of maybe colour and pomp. Bangor aren't what they used to be, but did a good pedigree in the cup years ago. Crusaders now have a decent pedigree in the cup in recent years. It's a colourful one, but you'd be, unless Stephen, Crusaders should win with the best will in the world to what Fino's doing down there, and he's doing good stuff, but they're still a fair way off. So, from a romantic point of view, yes, it is colourful, but I'd be surprised if Crusaders didn't overcome Bangor quite handily. Funny enough, the only one that I think could be a potential banana skin or a potential upset is Glenavon against the Welders. That's the only real possible one that I think, and I'm not even sure it'll happen. I was going to say that it'll not happen now that they've signed Jordan Stewart, Peter, but then I think he's cup tied. You see, another cute move by Mr. Healy.
I wouldn't put anything past Glenavon, and when it comes to big dramatic wins to soul crushing dramas. So yeah, that could go anywhere. Harland and Wolf Welders are one of the informed teams in the league right now. They're scoring for fun at times. Portadown would have maybe had a better chance against Glentoran of 5 weeks ago. It doesn't look as rosy there. I think Knockbreda, as much as they've been up and down the championship, on that pitch up at Breda Park, if Dungannon don't turn up, Knockbreda could get a goal, get a wee shock there. I think I played each other before that time of the year. Look, Lauren Linfield, people say throw out the form book, but genuinely, Lauren Linfield, Cliftonville Coleraine, throw it out, because those are proper cup ties there.
Yeah, looking at the two games, the only thing that I would maybe read into it is the fact that Cliftonville will be glad that they're playing Coleraine at home, because of very, very good form at Solitude. It's very, very tight, both. Mark, how do you look at either of them, Lauren, Linfield, in my opinion, Linfield just aren't as strong as they were last year. They still have that Linfield winning mentality. There's no doubt about that. Now Jamie Mulgrew, he was injured. I don't know if he's going to be back. I don't know what don't know what the crack is with him. If they were to lose him, I would be a little bit worried, because I think they need character in their team, and Jimmy Callagher's already out. And you can have players of the same ability, but it's that warrior spirit, that been there, done it, that everybody else in the team can just look around and look at Jamie and Jimmy and know they're going to do the business. You can absolutely rely on those guys 110%. But Lauren have wobbled as well a wee bit. I don't think, if I was a betting man, and I do enjoy a little wager now and again, I'm not a heavy big gambler at all, but like an interest, I don't know. You'd maybe be looking at now draw over 90 minutes for that one. The outcome I just don't know. Cliftonville Coleraine, really too tight to call. Really, really, really too tight to call. Possibly Cliftonville, but then Cliftonville we've got the old Irish Cup hoodoo.
One thing I'd say, I think Coleraine will have in the league form when they're playing against the big teams, they've tried to be solid and attack the other team because they don't want to lose points and are hoping they can come after them. I think to a certain extent, big game away from home, shackles are off. We saw it once they were behind last time in the league. Coleraine have nothing to lose here, so I think they'll really go for it. If it was up at Coleraine, I would favour them, but I think they have a stronger chance in the cup than I would rank against some of the other big teams in the league.
Put a few quid on it then.
Stephen, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you back on again. If people would like to see all the things you think and the thoughts you have, where can they read your opinions, either in online or in black and white ink form?
Yeah, I'm a freelancer for the Sunday World, Sunday Life, Belfast Telegraph, and maybe anybody else who'll have me, Peter. So that's basically where I do my stuff. I do a television show, which name will not be mentioned as well, for it pales by comparison by your wonderful podcast. But no, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be on here, Peter. It's good talking football. We love football, and thanhanks for putting up with me.
I'm so delighted to have you on. Another absolute stormer after our first one. Hopefully I'll get chatting to you before there is ribbons on a trophy, and we'll divert from football as my final question. I'm actually going to throw this out to everybody. I'm booking a stag. Where am I booking it? Because I've got 30 million people saying I should go here, there and everywhere. I'm going to the continent and I'm trying to think where I should go.
What time of the year?
In the next, probably May, June.
Portugal?
Sweet.
Portugal or Amsterdam, take your pick.
I will take that. I'll let you know if I'm sitting either on a beach or I'm chilling out beside a canal. I'll take a picture of a beer and I'll be thinking of you, Mr. Looney.
Good luck to you. Thanks for having us on, Peter. I wish you well.
I appreciate it. All the best.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
And there we go. I was actually not joking about that. I am quite literally going through Skyscanner like it is quite literally my job. If you've listened all the way to the end of this podcast and you're listening to me chat away, you are dedicated and you are appreciated more than you know. So with that, just like message at Kick a Match. I haven't done this yet. Just Twitter me and don't say what it's for, but just say at like places like cities or something like that, and just add it and I'll know what you're talking about. I'll appreciate it, you know. And wherever I go, I'm sure I'll let you know. But yeah, I guess I would say, like, I should say what kind of vibe I'm after. But to be honest, I wanna hear straight from the mouth, free form, what is going on. I'm looking for a good time with the lads. One time I will probably, hopefully be going is when all the season is over. But before the season is over, I'm going to have plenty more just like this. Please follow me. Where are you going to ask? Where are you going to tell me these cities or countries? And I want cities. I don't want big country. I want cities. Tell me exactly where, town or microstate or whatever. Tell me cities. You can tell me more than one. And you can tell me via Instagram, Facebook or Twitter. It's at Kicking Match on all of them. You can also say to your smart speaker, hey smart speaker, please play Kicking Match and Irish League podcast. But you know that already. Thank you very much. I'll chat to you soon. Sorry I was a bit late this week. You know, just had to get it in with all the transfers and logistics and everything else in between. Till next time, bon voyage.